My name is Loretta Kingsley. I'm 72 years old, and I spent most of my life doing the kind of work people only notice when it's not done. I taught middle school art for 36 years in Prescott, Arizona. It wasn't glamorous, but it was good. I raised my son Mark on my own after his father died in a car accident when Mark was only 10. I never remarried, never really had time to. I had a boy to raise, bills to pay, and a classroom full of kids who needed someone to remind them that color, mess, and imagination still mattered. When my granddaughter Emily was born, I felt something shift. There's nothing quite like watching your own child become a parent. It makes you feel older and younger at the same time. I remember holding her tiny body in the hospital thinking, this is the second beginning of my motherhood. Emily and I had a bond. She used to call me Queenie, braid my hair while I read her bedtime stories, and tell me I looked like a fairy godmother. I kept a shoebox under my bed with her little drawings and notes from when she was a child. Things like, I love you, Grandma, don't ever get old. So when she got engaged this past spring, I was thrilled. Genuinely. She wanted a sunset wedding in Scottsdale at one of those fancy resorts in the desert. Mark told me they'd need help covering costs, especially for the video and photography. I didn't even hesitate. I took out a cashier's check for $5,800 from my retirement savings and handed it to Emily the next time we met for coffee. I told her, your memories deserve to last. Let me give you this one gift. She teared up, hugged me tight, and said, you always know what to do, Grandma. That moment stayed with me. I walked home that day feeling like I still had purpose, like I still mattered. Not because I gave money, but because I gave love the way I always had, quietly, without asking for anything back. Back then, I still believed I had a place in their story, not a lead role, just somewhere in the frame. I didn't know I was wrong. The rehearsal dinner was held at one of those desert chic resorts just outside Scottsdale. Sun-bleached wood, fairy lights hanging from every tree, and polished mason jars at every table. It looked like something straight out of a magazine. Everything was curated, intentional, soft-lit, and perfect. I stood near the back, out of the way, watching the guests laugh and sip overpriced cocktails. Emily was glowing, floating through the space like she belonged to another world now, one built on Instagram filters and wedding planners who knew their way around a Pinterest board. Mark found me by the water station. Hey, Mom, he said, placing a hand gently on my elbow. Can I talk to you for a sec? Somewhere quieter. We walked just a few steps over, near a row of white folding chairs. The videographer and his assistant were moving around the space, doing test shots. Mark glanced toward them, then turned back to me. Look, now, he began. You know how Emily's going for a more modern, minimalist kind of feel with the wedding video? The vibe's really specific. Clean, curated, that sort of thing. And I think... He hesitated just long enough to make me feel cold. I think it might be better if you're not, featured in the footage. Maybe just stay toward the back. It's nothing personal. Nothing personal. The words hit like a bucket of ice water. I stared at him, trying to find a trace of discomfort in his eyes. Something that said he hated saying this, that he didn't really mean it. But all I saw was calm efficiency. He wasn't embarrassed, just managing a detail. I forced a smile. The kind you practice when you've been around long enough to know how to make other people comfortable even while you're bleeding inside. Of course, I said. I understand. He patted my shoulder like I was a helpful neighbor, then walked off. Just like that. No hug, no thanks, not even a glance back. I stood there a long while afterward, pretending to study a centerpiece I couldn't even see clearly. That night, back home, I sat in the quiet and realized something. It wasn't just that they didn't want me in the video. They didn't want me in the picture. I didn't sleep much that night. I kept seeing Mark's face, the calm way he delivered that little speech, like he was checking off a box on a to-do list. Not cruel, just detached. Like I was wallpaper, visible, but unnecessary. Around midnight, I got up and pulled the contract from my kitchen drawer. I read every word of it, line by line, the same way I used to go over student art rubrics when I graded. There it was, clear as day. Cancellation allowed before services were rendered. Partial refund guaranteed. I sat with that knowledge for a while. Then I picked up the phone and called the company. A man named Darren answered. He remembered me. He was kind. I told him I wanted to cancel the video and photo package. He didn't ask why, just confirmed the details and said the refund, about $4,600, would be processed in a few days. I said thank you, hung up, and stared at the quiet house around me. The dusty photo frames, the half-finished watercolor on the dining table. The silence didn't feel peaceful that night. It felt like proof that no one needed me. The morning of the wedding came bright and hot. I wore the light blue dress Emily once told me made me look soft and classy. I brushed my hair, put on my pearl earrings, my husband's last anniversary gift to me. I looked at myself in the mirror and said out loud, "Smile." And I did, for a while. At the ceremony, no one mentioned the cameras. No one noticed they were gone. People sipped cocktails, threw flower petals, clapped like nothing was missing. But I knew. I sat in the back row like a ghost. No one asked me to move up. No one took my picture. I watched Emily cry happy tears and Mark beam like the father of the year. They looked beautiful, perfect, as if I'd never existed. That night, Emily's name lit up on my phone. Her voice shook. "Grandma, what did you do?" I said it calmly. "I canceled the contract. I figured if I didn't belong in the video, I shouldn't be paying for it." There was silence. Then she said it, so soft it cut deeper than a scream. "You ruined everything." After the wedding, the house got quieter than usual, and that's saying something because I live alone. No calls, no texts, just silence thick enough to drown in. Not the peaceful kind I used to enjoy, like when I'd sip tea and listen to the birds outside. This was the kind that hummed with rejection. I sat at my kitchen table the next morning, the same place I'd once helped Emily cut construction paper hearts, and opened the drawer where I kept my legal documents. The will was there, neatly folded, notarized. On page 3, in black ink, it said, "The property located in Sedona, Arizona shall be left to my granddaughter, Emily Kingsley." I stared at those words for a long time. They didn't sting. Not anymore. They just felt outdated, like a promise made to someone who no longer existed. I had spent years assuming love was best expressed through giving. Give your time, your money, your energy, and eventually, someone would see you. But what I'd learned in the past week was painful and clear. Some people will never see you unless you stop giving. So I got dressed, drove into town, and walked into the office of my attorney. Her name's Carla, kind woman. About my son's age, but with a sharper sense of gratitude. "I want to amend the will," I told her. "I'm changing the Sedona property." She raised an eyebrow. "To who?" "To a foundation," I said. "The Arizona Collective for Senior Women in the Arts. They're opening a retreat space. They could use the house more than anyone else." She smiled slowly. "That's generous." "No," I said. "It's finally honest." We signed the paperwork that afternoon. It felt lighter than I expected, like exhaling after holding your breath too long. Back home, I walked through the living room and touched the photo of Emily on the mantle, her third-grade school picture, the one where she's missing a front tooth and holding a paintbrush. "I loved you," I whispered. "I still do." But love doesn't mean letting yourself disappear. Not anymore. That night, for the first time in years, I pulled out my old easel and set up in front of the window. It was time to paint something for me. The morning after I signed the new will, I made a cup of Earl Grey and stood at my window watching the sun warm the red rocks in the distance. It was the same view I'd seen for years, but it looked different now. Maybe because, for the first time in a long while, I wasn't trying to be anywhere else. I pulled my old easel out of the hall closet. It was dusty and stiff from years of neglect, but still standing, like me. I set it up by the window and took out the watercolor set my husband gave me for our 30th anniversary. I'd never used it. Life had always gotten in the way. I started painting again. Nothing fancy. A bowl of fruit, a quiet porch, a sky full of blue that didn't need to mean anything. Just color, just movement, just me. At the local library, I signed up for a Saturday painting group. The woman who ran it, Lisa, was maybe in her 60s and had hair like wild silver grass. She didn't ask why I was there. She just smiled and handed me a brush. "You don't need to impress anyone," she said. "Just put yourself on the canvas." That's exactly what I did. Week by week, stroke by stroke, something shifted. I stopped checking my phone, stopped waiting for apologies that would never come. The silence that once haunted me now felt like room to breathe. No calls from Mark, no texts from Emily, just absence. And for once, I didn't fill that absence with casseroles or guilt or birthday checks. One evening, Lisa approached me after class. "You ever think about showing your work? The community center hosts a senior art showcase every fall. I think you have something to say." I blinked at her, surprised. "Me?" She nodded. "Yes, you." That night, I looked over the piece I'd been working on, a dimly lit banquet hall, empty chairs, a long table dressed in white. At the very end, one chair illuminated by a single lamp. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't grief. It was truth. I titled it, "Still Here." For the first time in decades, I wasn't waiting for someone else to name my worth. I had painted it myself. The community center smelled like coffee and acrylic paint, two scents that shouldn't go together, but somehow did. It was gallery night, my first. Lisa helped me hang the last piece. We stepped back and looked at the room. My work, 12 paintings, lined the walls, each one a little breadcrumb from the quiet corners of my life. A porch swing in shadow, a worn book on a nightstand, a vase with one flower and no note. In the center of the gallery, under soft yellow light, stood the one I couldn't stop painting, the banquet hall with the single empty chair. Still here, people trickled in. Not a lot. Some neighbors, a few strangers, other women from class. One woman stood in front of Still Here for nearly 10 minutes, eyes wet. "Feels like being uninvited without ever being told," she whispered. I nodded. I know that feeling. Near the end of the night, a little girl came in holding her mother's hand. She stopped right in front of my banquet hall painting, tilted her head and asked, "Is that your chair?" I smiled. "It was," I said gently, "but now I have a whole room." Later at home, I sat with a cup of tea and watched the light fade through the blinds. My phone sat face down on the counter. I hadn't checked it all day. I didn't need to. Whatever messages might have been there, if any, no longer had the power to rattle me. The family never apologized. Not really. Mark sent a short email about misunderstandings. Emily posted another set of wedding photos, posed, polished, beautiful in the way magazines are, but empty of warmth. The caption read, "Grateful for growth, family is forever." I didn't comment. I didn't need to explain that sometimes family is a story people tell themselves to feel good. What I had now wasn't loud. It wasn't grand. But it was mine. A quiet life. A table I chose. A room where I belonged without auditioning for it. For so long, I gave love like a salary. Automatic, expected, unreciprocated. But now I love like art. Deliberate, honest, and only when it's earned. If you've ever felt erased by the very people you loved the most, if you've given quietly, expected nothing, and still found yourself left behind, then maybe this story felt a little too familiar. You are not alone. I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever walked away, not out of anger, but out of clarity? Have you ever stopped showing up for those who only noticed you when they needed something? Share your thoughts in the comments, no matter how small. Because sometimes the most powerful stories are the ones we never thought we'd tell. And if this touched you in any way, don't forget to like and subscribe. We're building a quiet corner of the internet here, for women who have carried enough for a lifetime and are finally ready to set it down.